"Officer, before you do this, you might want to ask yourself who you're really stopping." The words were calm, almost too calm for the tension already rising in the middle of Brookdale Park. Officer Travis Cole didn't like calm voices like that. Not when they came from men he had already decided were trouble. The late afternoon sun spilled through the oak trees in long gold streaks, lighting the public chess tables, the gravel path, the slow drift of families heading toward the parking lot with strollers and paper cups and tired little kids in bright sneakers. Everything had felt ordinary just seconds ago. Then Cole's voice cracked across the air like a siren. "Both of you stand up. Now." Heads turned. Conversations thinned. A teenage boy on a scooter rolled to a stop near the fountain. At the center of it all sat Marcus Reed and Noah Bennett, two black men in plain clothes, a half-finished chess match between them and a takeout coffee cooling beside the board. Marcus looked up first. He was in his late 30s, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, with the kind of stillness that made most people lower their voices without realizing why. Noah, younger and leaner, rested two fingers against a black knight tipped slightly toward the center of the board. Neither man looked startled. That, more than anything, irritated Cole. He stepped closer, boots grinding against the gravel, one hand already resting near his belt like he was posing for an audience that had not asked for a show. "You fit a description," he said. "Suspicious behavior." Reports came in. Marcus rose slowly, not defensive, not aggressive, just controlled. He held his hands where Cole could see them, his face unreadable except for the faintest tightening at the jaw. "Description of what?" he asked. The question hung there, simple and direct, but it landed with weight. Cole ignored it. His eyes moved over Marcus and then Noah in the quick, dismissive way of a man who believed observation and judgment were the same thing. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he said. Noah stood next, smooth and quiet, dusting a speck of dirt from the cuff of his jacket. Around them, the air seemed to change. The breeze still moved the trees, and somewhere across the lawn a dog barked twice, sharp and excited. But closer in, near the chess table, the world had narrowed into something tighter, colder. A woman walking with a toddler slowed her pace. Two joggers stopped by the path, pretending to stretch while they watched. Someone near the benches lifted a phone, not high, not obvious, but high enough. Marcus noticed it. So did Noah. Neither reacted. Cole took another step in, chest out, voice louder now that he had an audience. "You two been here long?" Noah glanced at the chessboard. "Long enough to know I was about to win." A few people nearby almost smiled, but the mood was too tense to let the joke breathe. Cole didn't smile at all. "Cute," he said. "IDs." Marcus reached slowly toward his back pocket, but Cole cut in immediately. "Easy. Nice and slow." The command came out sharper than necessary, and everyone within earshot felt it. Marcus stopped mid-motion and looked straight at him. Not challenging. Not afraid. Just measuring. The sunlight caught the edge of the overturned white queen near his wrist, throwing a thin blade of light across the table. Noah's gaze drifted past Cole for one brief second, toward the walking trail that curved behind the maples, then back again. Tiny movement. Easy to miss. Not meaningless. Marcus let out a slow breath. "Officer," he said, voice low and steady. "If you're doing this because of a real call, then do it right." Cole's face hardened. "I said ID." He reached toward Noah first, ready to push the moment into something bigger, something public, something neither man seemed willing to give him. And that was exactly when the park, the crowd, the chessboard, and the quiet gold light of late afternoon all seemed to hold their breath. Marcus did not reach for his wallet. He let his hand fall back to his side with deliberate care, as if even a small movement deserved precision now. The chess pieces between him and Noah caught the last stretch of sunlight, black and white shapes glowing against the scarred wooden board, frozen in the middle of a game that suddenly no longer mattered. Around them, Brookdale Park had gone strangely thin, like the noise of the place had been pulled back behind glass. A little girl near the fountain stopped chasing pigeons and looked toward the chess tables. A man in a navy windbreaker paused with his coffee halfway to his mouth. Even the breeze seemed to hesitate in the branches overhead. Officer Travis Cole stood close enough now that Marcus could see the faint pink line where the man's sunglasses had rested earlier in the day. Up close, Cole looked less like confidence and more like habit, like someone who had spent so long performing authority that he no longer knew where the badge ended and the man began. His radio hissed softly on his shoulder. His jaw stayed tight. His eyes did not. They kept moving, quick and narrow, skimming Marcus and Noah with the kind of suspicion that asked no questions because it had already chosen the answer. Noah looked down at the board one last time, then lifted his gaze with an expression so mild it almost passed for indifference. He was wearing a charcoal jacket over a plain gray shirt, nothing flashy, nothing that would invite attention, but there was something clean and exact about the way he carried himself. Even standing under pressure, he looked centered, like every thought had already been filed where it belonged. "Officer," Noah said, his voice even, "you are making a scene in the middle of a public park over two men playing chess." Cole turned sharply toward him. "I do not need a lecture." "Then maybe you need facts," Marcus said. The words were not loud, but they reached farther than shouting would have. A young mother near the path shifted her son onto her hip and slowed down without meaning to. Somewhere behind the benches, a bicycle bell rang and was gone. Cole let out a humorless breath. "You want facts? Fine." Dispatch got a call about two males lingering near the playground area, watching people, acting evasive. Marcus looked toward the playground, 40 yards away across the grass, where two boys were taking turns on a swing while their grandfather stood nearby in a red baseball cap. Then he looked back at Cole. "We have been at this table for 27 minutes, he said. "We bought coffee from the concession stand by the east gate at 4:12. We have not gone near the playground." Cole frowned, not because he believed him, but because details like that unsettled him. Noah reached for his coffee cup, then thought better of it, and folded his hands instead. "You can verify the purchase if you want," he said. The girl at the register had blue braids and a bandage on her thumb. Marcus caught the slightest flicker in Cole's face. It was not doubt yet. It was irritation at being met with composure instead of confusion. Men like Cole expected hesitation. They expected fear, defensiveness, apology, the clumsy scramble of someone trying to prove he belonged in a place that had never challenged anyone else to belong. What stood in front of him instead was restraint, and restraint had a way of making unfairness look exactly like what it was. Cole planted one hand on the edge of the table and leaned in. "I said I need identification." His voice dropped lower, flatter, the performance tightening into something more personal. "And do not tell me how to do my job." Marcus held his gaze. There was no anger in his face now, only a stillness that seemed older than the moment itself, the kind built from being misunderstood too many times to count, and surviving each one without surrendering dignity. The gold light along the table had shifted toward amber. A leaf skittered across the gravel near Noah's shoe. For one brief second, Noah's eyes cut past Cole again, toward the curved trail lined with maples and the black iron fence beyond it. He was watching something, or waiting for it. Marcus noticed, but he did not look. Not yet. He kept his attention on Cole, on the impatience rising beneath the uniform, on the subtle crack forming in the officer's certainty. "No one is refusing to cooperate," Marcus said. "But if you are going to demand something from us in front of all these people, then you should be prepared to explain why." Cole's lips pressed into a thin line. The crowd had thickened without moving closer, as if everyone understood the invisible line that tension draws around a moment like this. A teenage girl now had her phone fully raised. An older man by the benches shook his head once, slowly, but said nothing. Public silence had its own kind of weight. Cole seemed to feel it. He straightened, adjusted the angle of his duty belt, and made a decision. "Turn around," he said to Noah. The words landed hard in the cooling air. Noah did not move. Marcus did not either. The chessboard sat between them like a question no one had answered yet. Pieces mid-battle, strategy interrupted, the Black Knight still guarding. The center, and somewhere just beyond the trees, hidden from everyone except the one man who had been quietly tracking time all along, something was finally beginning to move. Noah did not turn around. He stood with the same quiet balance he had held at the chess table, shoulders relaxed, chin level, as if Officer Cole had asked him to comment on the weather instead of issuing a command in front of half the park. That stillness changed the air more than shouting would have. It made the moment feel sharpened, outlined, undeniable. Marcus could sense the crowd pressing inward without taking a single visible step. People always did that when tension turned real. They leaned with their attention first. The sun had dropped lower now, leaving the tops of the oak trees lit in copper while the lower paths slipped into cooler shadow. The fountain at the center of the park kept spilling its steady sheet of water into the basin below, a soft sound that now seemed far away, swallowed by the silence around the chess tables. Cole's hand stayed near his belt. Not reaching. Not resting either. Waiting. His face had gone flat in that practiced way men used when they wanted to appear in control after feeling it begin to slide. I gave you an order, he said. Noah tilted his head just slightly, not mocking, not submissive, simply listening with the patience of someone who had learned long ago that the loudest man in a scene was not always the one with the most power. And I heard you, Noah replied. That does not mean you gave a lawful one. The words landed with surgical precision. A murmur moved at the edge of the crowd and vanished just as quickly. Marcus watched Cole absorb the sentence, watched the pulse jump once in the officer's neck. That one hit. Not because it was disrespectful, because it was accurate. Cole shifted his weight and glanced briefly around, measuring the witnesses, the phones, the faces that had now become a ring of expectation. A teenager in a basketball jersey whispered something to his friend. The older man by the benches had stopped pretending not to watch. Even the grandfather near the swings had turned halfway around, one hand still on the chain as the swing slowed to a gentle creak. Public space had become public judgment, and Cole knew it. That was why his next words came colder. You want to play lawyer in a park, that is your choice. But if I say there was a complaint, then there was a complaint. Marcus studied him for a long second, then lowered his eyes briefly to the board. White queen down. Black knight centered. Noah had always preferred patient pressure over flashy moves. Let the other side overextend. Let them reveal themselves. Then close the gap. When Marcus looked up again, his expression had softened in a way that almost resembled sympathy. A complaint is not a conviction, he said. And suspicion is not a substitute for facts. Cole laughed once under his breath, but there was no amusement in it. You two have an answer for everything. Noah finally moved, though only enough to adjust his jacket cuff with one hand. Small motion. Clean. Controlled. Only when the questions are wrong, he said. Cole took one step closer to him. The gravel gave a dull crunch beneath his boot. Turn around. Noah's eyes flicked past him again, toward the curved trail beyond the maples. This time Marcus caught it clearly. Someone was coming, or something was aligning, and Noah had been tracking it by sound, by timing, by instinct. Marcus did not need to know what yet. He only needed to know that Noah remained steady, which meant the line had not broken. Not yet. A breeze moved through the park and lifted a paper napkin from beneath a nearby bench. It skated across the path and caught against the leg of the chess table. The coffee in Noah's cup had gone untouched long enough for the thin layer at the top to stop trembling. Strange, Marcus thought. How a whole park could look so ordinary while one conversation quietly rearranged everything inside it. Cole seemed to feel that too. His posture tightened. His voice lowered. Let me make this simple. Two men. Near a playground. Matching a report. Refusing instructions. You tell me how that looks. Marcus answered without missing a beat. It looks like you started with the ending and skipped the truth. For the first time, something unguarded flashed across Cole's face. Not doubt. Not shame. Annoyance sharpened by being seen too clearly. He had expected nervousness, stumbling, maybe anger he could point to and hold up as proof. Instead, he had found two. Men who would not bend themselves smaller to make his assumptions easier. That was the thing about quiet dignity. It forced ugliness into better light. Behind Cole, a woman lowered her phone for a moment and whispered, "This is not right," to no one in particular. The words were soft, but in the hush they carried. Cole heard them. So did Marcus. So did Noah. The officer straightened, jaw locked, and made the kind of decision men make when they would rather escalate than admit the ground beneath them is weak. Fine, he said. If you are not going to comply, I can detain both of you until this gets sorted out. Marcus let the sentence settle. Then, very slowly, he glanced past Cole for the first time, toward the tree-lined path Noah had been watching all along. A figure had just appeared there, distant and unremarkable to anyone else, moving at a measured pace with a baseball cap pulled low and one hand in a jacket pocket. To the crowd, it was just another man in the park. To Noah, it was timing. To Marcus, it was confirmation. When he looked back at Cole, his face was calm again, almost painfully calm, and that calm carried something new inside it now, something quiet and dangerous for the man standing in front of him. "Officer," Marcus said, his voice lower than before, "you are about to step into something much larger than you think." Officer Cole held Marcus's gaze for a beat too long, as if he could stare certainty back into place. The late sunlight had thinned to a darker gold now, stretched low across the grass and the concrete paths, and the shadows from the trees were beginning to merge into broad pools of cool gray. Somewhere behind the fountain, a sprinkler clicked on with a dry metallic tick and began sweeping a fine mist across the outer lawn. It should have been an ordinary sound. Instead, it made the silence around the chess table feel even sharper. Cole's mouth tightened. He had heard the warning in Marcus's voice, and that alone offended him. Men like him did not like being told they were standing on the wrong side of a moment. They preferred noise to reflection, control to truth. He lifted his chin slightly, posture rigid, and looked from Marcus to Noah as if deciding which one he most wanted to break the calm of first. "That sounds like a threat," he said. Marcus did not blink. "No," he replied. "It sounds like advice." A few people at the edge of the crowd exchanged glances. The woman with the phone had lowered it a little, but she was still recording. Her toddler had fallen asleep against her shoulder, one tiny sneaker hanging loose as she watched. The teenager in the basketball jersey took 2 quiet steps sideways for a better view. Everything in the park kept moving in small ways, but around these 3 men the moment felt suspended, held like breath in the chest. Noah stood with one hand near the chess table, fingers resting lightly against the weathered wood, his expression unreadable except for the steady focus in his eyes. He glanced once more toward the curved path beyond the maples. The man in the baseball cap had moved closer now, still not fast, still not drawing attention, just another shape drifting through the evening light, with a paper bag in one hand and a neutral face that asked the world to forget it. Marcus followed Noah's line of sight without fully turning his head. He saw enough. The timing was narrowing. Their window, already delicate, had become something thinner than glass. And still Cole stood there, filling the air with his own assumptions. "You think I do not know what I am doing?" Cole asked. Marcus answered carefully, as if each word had to be placed where it could not be misunderstood. "I think you saw 2 black men sitting in a public park and decided that was reason enough to make them explain themselves." The sentence did not rise in volume, but it moved through the crowd like a current. No one gasped. No one interrupted. Yet the truth of it landed everywhere at once. The older man by the benches lowered his eyes. The mother with the stroller pressed her lips together. Even the joggers, sweaty and still, stopped pretending this was merely unusual. Cole's face changed in a way that told Marcus the words had found their mark. Not because the officer agreed, because he had heard himself named with a precision he could not easily dismiss. "Watch it," Cole said, voice low and clipped. "You do not get to accuse me of that." Noah looked at him then, really looked at him, and there was no anger in his face, only a cool kind of disappointment that somehow carried even more weight. "You accused us first," Noah said. "Without facts. Without cause. In front of your own community." The fountain continued its soft rush. A crow crossed overhead, its shadow sliding over the chessboard for a brief second before disappearing into the branches. Marcus could feel the tension gathering at the back of his neck, not fear, not panic, but the strain of time folding in on itself. They had come to Brookdale Park for a reason. Every move of the afternoon had been deliberate, every minute measured, every ordinary detail chosen, because that was how some truths had to be handled, quietly, patiently, in plain sight. A chess table, 2 cups of coffee, a public park. Nothing dramatic, nothing memorable, unless someone like Cole forced the ordinary into spectacle. The man in the baseball cap had reached the path nearest the wrought iron fence now. He paused beside a trash can, set down his paper bag, and checked his phone with the detached boredom of someone killing time. But Noah's shoulders shifted almost imperceptibly, and Marcus knew what that meant. The target was in position. The exchange was close. The operation, already under strain, had entered the part where no mistakes could be afforded. Cole mistook Marcus's quick glance toward the path for nervousness and stepped closer. Gravel cracked under his boot. "That is it," he said. "Both of you are staying right here until backup arrives." Noah's voice remained level. "Your backup is not the problem." Cole frowned, thrown again by the answer. Marcus almost felt sorry for him then, just for a second. Not because the man deserved softness, but because he had no idea how completely he had misread the scene. He thought this was about control, about winning a public standoff, about proving that his badge could bend strangers into obedience. He did not understand that he had walked into a room without walls and mistaken himself for the center of it. Marcus straightened slightly, the fading sunlight drawing a clean line along the edge of his face. "Officer," he said, "if you keep going, you are not just embarrassing yourself." Cole's radio crackled again, sudden and sharp. The sound made half the crowd flinch. Cole reached up automatically, eyes never leaving Marcus, and pressed the speaker button. Static. Then dispatch, tinny and distant. "Unit 12, status check." Cole answered without looking away. "Occupied." It was one word, but it changed the air. Noah's eyes flicked to the baseball cap again. The man had lifted his phone, glanced once toward the fountain, then started walking toward the center path. Too soon. Too fast. Marcus felt the shift instantly. The operation was moving before it should. Because of pressure. Because of attention. Because one officer had let bias turn an ordinary park into a spotlight. Marcus's voice dropped, calm as ever, but now there was steel under it. "You need to step back," he said. Cole did not. He reached toward Noah's arm, certain at last that action would restore whatever authority the truth had started to loosen. And the moment his hand moved, the evening around them seemed to lock into place. The second Cole's hand moved toward Noah, the park changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically, just enough for Marcus to feel it in the air, the way a room changes when a secret is about to stop being a secret. Noah stepped back half a pace, smooth and precise, not resisting, not provoking, simply refusing to let the moment become what Cole wanted it to become. The motion was small, but it was enough. Enough for the man in the baseball cap to glance up too quickly from his phone. Enough for Marcus to see the paper bag in his hand tilt open for an instant, revealing the corner of a small black case before it disappeared again. Enough for Noah to shift his attention fully, the polite stillness in his face tightening into focus. Cole saw none of that. Or if he did, he misunderstood it the way he had misunderstood everything else since he walked into the scene. He took Noah's step back as defiance. He took Marcus's calm as arrogance. He took the crowd's silence as permission to keep going. "Do not move," he said, louder now, and the command rang across the gravel path and bounced off the fountain's low stone rim. A child near the swings looked up. The grandfather in the red cap pulled the swing to a stop and turned his body protectively, without seeming to know why. The woman recording raised her phone higher. Somewhere beyond the trees, a siren wailed faintly and faded. Ordinary city. Sound. Wrong timing. Marcus's eyes cut once more toward the baseball cap. The man had resumed walking, but not casually now. He was moving with the clipped, inward urgency of someone who had realized a careful plan was collapsing in public. He passed the trash can, kept one hand near the paper bag, and headed toward the west path instead of the fountain. Change of route. Change of confidence. The operation was slipping. Marcus felt the loss like a physical thing, thin and cold behind his ribs. Weeks of surveillance, coded check-ins, schedules built around patterns so repetitive they almost looked accidental, all of it now being bent by one officer's ego and one officer's bias into something unstable. Noah saw it too. "Marcus," he said quietly, not looking away from the moving target. One word. That was all. But Marcus heard the warning inside it. Cole did not. "No, do not start that," Cole snapped. "You do not get to signal each other like I am stupid." Marcus looked back at him, and for the first time there was something heavier than disappointment in his expression. Not anger. Something sadder. The exhaustion of seeing the same ugly mistake wear a different uniform every time. "This was never about safety," Marcus said. "You felt powerful the second you thought no one here could challenge you." Cole's face flushed darker. "Enough." The word came out hard and flat. He reached again, not roughly, but with the stiff certainty of a man trying to force the world back into his preferred shape. Noah shifted aside, controlled and exact, and that was when the baseball cap broke into a faster walk. Not running. Not yet. But fast enough. Marcus saw the black case disappear deeper into the paper bag. Saw the man angle toward the parking lot exit instead of the drop point by the fountain. Saw the entire afternoon begin to unravel in a line of movement almost no one else in the park had even noticed. "He is leaving," Noah said. Cole stared at him. Who? Wrong question. Fatal question. Marcus turned fully toward the path now, and the crowd instinctively followed his gaze. Heads turned. Attention moved like a current through the park. The man in the baseball cap felt it. He glanced back once, brief and sharp, and in that glance Marcus saw confirmation. The contact had recognized. Exposure. Whatever exchange was supposed to happen here was done. Cole finally noticed the man, but too late and for the wrong reason. Is that your friend? He asked, suspicion jumping tracks without slowing down. Marcus almost laughed at the cruelty of it, at how even now the officer's mind chose accusation over understanding. He was your missed clue, Marcus said. Cole's brow furrowed. Behind him, dispatch crackled again through the shoulder radio, asking for an update in a voice made thin by static. He ignored it. The crowd murmured now, not loudly, but enough to change the balance. The older man by the benches shook his head again, more firmly this time. The mother with the stroller took out her own phone. The woman recording said, barely above a whisper, he should have listened. Cole heard that too. Marcus saw him hear it. Saw the man's pride tighten around the moment like a fist. That was the real danger now. Not force. Not noise. Pride. The kind that would rather ruin the truth than admit it had been wrong from the beginning. Cole stepped in front of Marcus as if he could block the entire park with his body. No one is going anywhere, he said. But the baseball cap was already 30 yards away and drifting farther, the paper bag steady at his side, his pace fast, his posture controlled, disappearing into the golden gray of early evening with every second Cole wasted. Noah's voice dropped even lower, almost swallowed by the fountain. We are losing him. Marcus closed his eyes for less than a heartbeat, then opened them. When he looked at Cole again, his calm had become something harder, cleaner, almost final. You already did, he said. The sentence landed like a stone in still water. Cole went motionless. Around them, the park held that silence only a public mistake can create, the kind where people stop pretending they are not witnessing the exact moment someone's certainty begins to collapse. The sprinkler clicked again in the distance. The chessboard sat abandoned between Marcus and Noah, the black knight still holding center, the white queen still down. And for one long second, as the target slipped farther toward the lot and the last of the sunlight bled off the gravel path, Officer Travis Cole understood that whatever this was, it had never been his stop to make. For the first time since Officer Cole had walked into their afternoon, no one spoke. The silence did not feel empty. It felt heavy, layered, almost visible in the cooling air above the chess table. The kind of silence that comes after a wrong move has already been made, and everyone present knows it, even if no one has said the words out loud yet. Brookdale Park had slipped fully into evening now. The gold light was nearly gone, leaving only a soft gray wash across the gravel paths and the damp shimmer of the fountain under the dimming sky. The sprinkler on the far lawn kept sweeping in slow, patient arcs, its mist catching what little light remained and turning it silver for a second before letting it disappear. Marcus stood still, shoulders square, hands open at his sides, his breathing steady in a way that had cost him years to learn. He had known men like Cole before. Different faces, different uniforms, same instinct. The quick decision, the hunger to control first and understand later. The reflex to turn black presence into suspicion, dignity into attitude, calm into disrespect. It was never new. That was the hardest part. Not the humiliation itself, the familiarity of it. Noah remained beside the table, one hand resting near the black knight, as if the interrupted game had become a quiet witness to everything unfolding around them. His face had not changed much, but Marcus could read the details others could not. The slight narrowing at the eyes. The measured way he set his jaw. The frustration held under discipline. The operation had slipped. Maybe not completely. Maybe not beyond repair. But the clean version of it, the version where evidence met timing and truth arrived without chaos, that version was gone now. Lost to a public confrontation that never should have happened. Across from them, Cole had not moved either. His hand had dropped from Noah's arm. His posture, so rigid minutes ago, now seemed caught between certainty and something far less comfortable. The crowd around them had gone quieter, but not because interest had faded. It was because people were no longer watching for entertainment. They were watching for meaning. The woman with the phone lowered it slowly, not because the moment mattered less, but because it had started to feel too human to hold behind a screen. The grandfather, near the swings, guided one child gently toward the path, his hand light at the small of the boy's back. The teenage boy on the scooter pushed off once, then stopped again, unable to leave. Public shame had its own weather. It settled over a place, cooled it, changed how everyone stood inside it. Marcus looked down at the board. White queen down. Black knight steady. The game had been moving toward a patient kind of checkmate. Not flashy, not obvious, just inevitable if no one interfered. He felt the irony of it almost too sharply to bear. For a moment he said nothing. He let the park breathe around him. The smell of wet grass drifted from the lawn. Somewhere by the east gate, a concession stand shutter rolled closed with a hollow metallic rattle. A little girl laughed in the distance, too far away to know anything had happened here at all. Life kept moving. It always did, even inside moments that marked people. Noah finally spoke, but softly, almost like he was speaking to the evening itself. He adjusted his route the second the crowd shifted. Marcus nodded once. I know. Cole looked between them. Who was he asked. The question came out differently now. Not as an accusation. Not quite as humility either. More like a man hearing the edge of a larger story and realizing too late that he had mistaken himself for the center of it. Marcus lifted his eyes to him. There was no triumph in his face. That was what made it land harder. Someone we had been waiting on for 3 weeks, he said. Cole's expression flickered. The words settled into the silence with brutal clarity. 3 weeks. Surveillance. Timing. Purpose. None of that belonged to random men in a park. None of that belonged to the version of the story he had built the second he saw them. Noah's gaze drifted toward the parking lot where the target had vanished into the evening blur of tail lights and tree shadows. We do not know if he is gone for good, he said. But we know he is gone for now. Cole swallowed. The sound was small, almost swallowed by the fountain. Marcus noticed it anyway. The officer's face had lost some of its hardness, but not in a way that invited pity. It looked strained now, unsettled by the first real weight of consequences. Around them, the people who had witnessed the scene began to peel away in slow, uncertain steps, not rushing, not lingering with the easy excitement of gossip. They left quietly, carrying that particular look people wear when they have seen something ugly and undeniable in ordinary light. The mother with the stroller turned down the west path. The joggers resumed moving, slower than before. The older man by the benches gave Marcus a brief nod, respectful and apologetic all at once, then walked on. The park was emptying around the silence, but the silence remained. Marcus drew in a long breath and let it out through his nose. His chest felt tight, though not from fear. From restraint. From the old ache of having to remain composed while someone else's prejudice rearranged your day, your work, your dignity, and then stood there asking questions as if understanding were still owed to him. He looked at Cole for a long second, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low, even, and tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. Do you know what the worst part is? Cole did not answer. He just watched. Marcus's eyes dropped briefly to the badge on Cole's chest, then rose again. It is not that you were wrong. People are wrong every day. It is that you were so certain you did not need to check. You saw us, decided who we were, and called that judgment professional instinct. Cole opened his mouth, then closed it. No defense came. The fountain kept spilling water into water. The Black Knight stayed at center. Noah folded his arms lightly and looked toward the darkening path, waiting now for whatever had to come next. And above them, the last strip of daylight thinned at the edge of the sky, leaving the whole park suspended inside a hush that felt less like peace than reckoning. The sound came first. Not a siren, not a shout. A sharp, encrypted pulse crackling through Noah's hidden earpiece, faint to everyone else, unmistakable to him. His eyes shifted once, focused and exact, and then the stillness around the chess table changed again. This time it did not belong to embarrassment or tension. It belonged to revelation. Noah reached calmly inside his jacket, and Officer Cole stiffened on instinct, but before the officer could speak, Noah drew out a leather credential wallet and opened it in one clean motion beneath the dim park light. Gold caught gray. The seal flashed. Federal Bureau of Investigation. For a second, Cole did not react at all. It was as if his mind had refused the image before him, as if reality itself had become an object too heavy to lift. Marcus watched the understanding arrive in stages. First confusion, then disbelief, then the sudden, hollow recognition of a man realizing the entire story he had told himself had collapsed at his feet. Noah's voice remained steady. Special Agent Noah Bennett. He angled the credentials slightly, making sure the officer could see every detail clearly. Then Marcus reached into the inside pocket of his coat and produced his own badge, slower, almost gentler, as though the truth did not need drama to be devastating. Supervisory Special Agent Marcus Reed, he said. The words landed harder than any raised voice could have. Cole stared at the badges, then at their faces, then back again. The fountain behind them kept spilling its soft sheet of water into the basin, and somewhere at the edge of the park a car door shut with a muffled thud, but near the chess table the world had narrowed to the quiet ruin of one man's certainty. No, Cole said before he seemed to realize he had spoken aloud. It was not denial in the full sense. It was shock struggling to breathe. Noah closed the wallet and slid it back into his jacket. Yes, he said, and your stop just compromised an active federal operation. The sentence cut clean through the evening air. Cole's face lost what color the fading light had left in it. His radio crackled on his shoulder, dispatch asking again for status, but he did not answer this time. He could not. Marcus looked past him toward the parking lot, where the target had disappeared into the wash of tail lights and tree shadow. Then back at the officer whose bias had turned weeks of patient work into a public mess. 3 weeks, Marcus said quietly. 3 weeks of surveillance, route patterns, coded contact windows, and a controlled exchange point built around one assumption. That we could sit in a public park without becoming the story. Cole swallowed hard. The crowd that had remained nearby did not move closer, but they did not leave either. The woman with the phone lowered it completely now, her face gone solemn. The older man by the benches stood very still. Even the teenage boy on the scooter had both feet on the ground, staring as if he had just watched a mask come off in slow motion. Noah touched 2 fingers briefly to the small mic hidden beneath his lapel. Package diverted. Target spooked. Westlot exit, he said, low and precise. Almost at once, 3 figures who had blended into the park so seamlessly they had seemed invisible moments earlier began moving. A man in a tracksuit near the fountain straightened and turned sharply toward the parking lot. A woman who had been reading on a bench closed her book and walked with sudden purpose toward the west gate. A maintenance worker by the restroom building spoke into his sleeve and disappeared down the side path. Cole followed each movement with widening eyes. It was all around him, had been all around him the entire time. Not 2 suspicious men in a park, but a net he had never noticed because he had been too busy staring at the 2 black men at the center of it. Marcus saw that realization break over him fully then, the sickening scale of it, the knowledge that he had not only been wrong but had been small inside his wrongness. Cole looked at Marcus, and when he finally found his voice, it was stripped of command. Why did you not say something? Marcus held his gaze. There was no cruelty in his answer. That made it worse. Because you never asked who we were, he said. You only decided. The words left nowhere to hide. Cole's shoulders sank by half an inch, almost too little to see, but Marcus saw it. Noah saw it too. The park, now nearly dark, seemed to exhale around them as the operation moved beyond the chess table and into the night. But at the center of it remained one brutal fact, clear as the badge in Marcus's hand. Officer Travis Cole had approached 2 black men with suspicion, authority, and certainty. And standing in front of him now were not suspects, not strangers, not men who needed his permission to belong in that park. They were federal agents, and he had looked straight at their dignity and mistaken it for guilt. By the time the last of the daylight drained from Brookdale Park, the scene had changed in a way Officer Cole could not undo. The crowd had thinned to a few quiet witnesses, the fountain glowed under its low perimeter lights, and the chess table sat in the middle of it all like an abandoned question. Noah stood a few feet away, listening through his earpiece, his attention divided between the operation still unfolding beyond the west lot and the silence left behind at the center of the park. Marcus slipped his badge back inside his coat and looked at Cole with the kind of calm that no longer needed to prove itself. Cole opened his mouth once, then stopped. The words did not come easily now. They had to pass through the wreckage of certainty first. His posture had changed. Not dramatically, just enough for the truth to show. The stiffness in his shoulders was gone. The authority in his chin had dropped, He looked, for the first time all evening, less like a man performing control and more like a man standing inside the consequences of his own choices. Agent Reed, he said at last, and even the use of the title carried strain. Marcus waited. Cole glanced at the chessboard, then at the gravel, then finally forced himself to meet Marcus's eyes again. I made the wrong call. The sentence came out flat, not polished, not heroic, just painful. Marcus did not answer immediately. The fountain continued its soft rush. Somewhere near the east gate, a lock clicked shut on the concession stand. A breeze moved through the trees and sent a few dry leaves skittering over the path. Ordinary sounds. Honest sounds. They gave the moment space to breathe. You made more than the wrong call, Marcus said quietly. You brought your assumptions into it before you brought your training. Cole's jaw tightened, but not in resistance. In recognition. That was the difference now. A few hours earlier, he would have rejected the sentence on instinct. Now he wore it. Noah turned slightly, listening to something in his earpiece, then gave Marcus a small nod. Not success. Not failure either. Just motion. The work was still alive. That mattered. Marcus looked back at Cole. Did they teach you at the academy that suspicion should arrive before observation? He asked. Cole let out a breath. Through his nose, bitter and thin. No. Did they teach you that two black men sitting in a public park owe you an explanation for existing there? Cole's face shifted again, something raw passing through it now. Shame, maybe. Or the beginning of it. No. He said a second time, quieter than before. Marcus nodded once, as if confirming something he had known all along. Then, this was not a training problem. The words did not strike like punishment. They settled like truth, and truth, when spoken softly, had a way of leaving nowhere to hide. Cole looked past Marcus for a second, out toward the dark path where the target had disappeared. I did not know, he said. Marcus's expression did not change. That is exactly the point, he replied. You did not know, and you acted like you did. Noah stepped closer then, one hand near his lapel microphone, his face composed but tired around the eyes. The team may still recover the contact through the secondary route, he said. We will know more in 10 minutes. Cole nodded quickly, as if grateful for any sentence that was not about him. But Marcus did not let him step away from the deeper thing. Listen to me, he said, and his voice was low enough that it made Cole focus harder, not less. What happened here tonight is bigger than one bad stop. You saw two men who looked ordinary to everybody else. Fathers would have walked by us. Mothers would have walked by us. Children did walk by us. You were the one who decided we were a problem. Ask yourself why. Cole's throat moved. He looked older than he had an hour ago. Not in years. In weight. I do not have a good answer, he admitted. Marcus held his gaze for a long second, and something in his face softened then, not because the damage was small, but because cruelty would have taught nothing. A good answer is not what matters tonight, he said. An honest one does. Cole lowered his eyes. For a moment, he looked like a man trying to find the line between regret and responsibility and realizing they were not the same thing. The woman who had been recording slipped her phone into her pocket and walked away without a word. The older man by the benches did the same. Witnesses leaving. Judgment staying. Noah's earpiece crackled again. He touched it lightly, listened, then looked at Marcus. Vehicle flagged at the outer intersection, he said. They have eyes on him again. Marcus closed his eyes for half a heartbeat and let the relief move through him without showing much of it. Not saved. Not clean. But not lost. He opened his eyes and looked back at Cole, who had clearly heard enough to understand one thing at least. Even after everything, Marcus and Noah were still doing the job. Still steady. Still professional. Still refusing to become as small as the way they had been seen. That was the part that finally broke something open in Cole's face. I am sorry, he said. This time the words were not defensive. They were stripped down, imperfect, and real. Marcus studied him in the dim park light, then gave the smallest nod. Do better than being sorry, he said. Be different the next time you see someone before you know them. Cole swallowed and nodded once, the motion stiff but sincere. Noah turned toward the west path, ready to move. Marcus reached down, set the fallen white queen upright again, and straightened the board with one calm hand. Then he looked at Cole one last time. Power is tested most when no one important seems to be watching, he said. Tonight, you found out that dignity was watching anyway. Noah moved first. Not fast, not dramatic, just with the clean purpose of a man returning to work after the world had briefly interrupted it. He touched 2 fingers to his earpiece, listened, and started toward the west path where the rest of the operation was tightening back into motion. Marcus followed a step behind, then stopped long enough to lift his cooling coffee from the table and pour it slowly into the gravel beside the bench. The dark liquid disappeared into the stones without a sound. It felt like the right ending for a moment that had spoiled too much and revealed even more. Behind him, Officer Cole remained where he was, still under the dull glow of the park lights, his shadow stretched thin across the path. He did not look like a man in command anymore. He looked like someone standing inside the shape of his own mistake, trying to understand how easily certainty had turned into humiliation. The chessboard sat between them all, pieces restored except for the small shift Marcus had made to the white queen. Not victory. Not yet. Just order returned where it could be. The fountain kept spilling water into water. The trees overhead moved in a light wind that had grown cooler with the hour, and the last of the evening traffic hummed beyond the iron fence like a world that had no idea what had just happened here. Marcus turned back once. Cole looked up immediately, as if he had been waiting for one last verdict. Marcus gave him none. Not because mercy was easy, and not because the man had earned comfort, but because some lessons do not need a speech. They need silence and memory and the long walk home afterward. Cole opened his mouth as if to say something else, then stopped. There was nothing left that would make the park forget. Nothing left that would erase the image of 2 black men he had reduced to suspicion before they had spoken 5 full sentences. Nothing left that would change the fact that dignity had stood in front of him the whole time, and he had mistaken it for threat. Noah glanced back from the path. Marcus. One word. A signal. Time to move. Marcus nodded and stepped away from the table. His shoes made a soft crunch on the gravel, steady and unhurried, while the park lights reflected faintly along the edge of his coat. As he passed the bench, the older man who had witnessed nearly everything was still there at the far end of the walkway, one hand resting on the back of the bench as if age, instinct, or conscience had rooted him in place. He met Marcus's eyes and gave a small nod, not dramatic, not performative, just human. Marcus returned it with the slightest tilt of his head and kept walking. That, too, mattered. Not applause. Recognition. The kind that asked for nothing and tried to repair what it could not undo. By the time Marcus reached Noah, the updates were already coming through. The target vehicle had been slowed at the outer intersection. Secondary surveillance had picked up the route change. The contact was not gone after all, only shaken loose from the plan and forced into the open. The operation would continue. Messier now. Harder. But alive. Noah exhaled through his nose, some of the tension leaving his face at last. We still have him, he said. Marcus looked once more over his shoulder. Officer Cole was still standing by the chess table, alone now except for the fountain and the dim park lights and the silence that had become his company. He would go home with that silence. He would carry the memory of this evening longer than the paperwork, longer than the embarrassment, maybe longer than the badge itself. Marcus did not hate him in that moment. Hate was too easy, too quick, too much like the reflex that had caused all of this in the first place. What Marcus felt was older and steadier. A tired kind of clarity. The knowledge that character reveals itself most honestly in ordinary places, under ordinary light, when there is no audience important enough to impress. Tonight, a chess table in a public park had become that test. One man had failed it. 2 others had not. Marcus turned away for good then, and he and Noah walked side by side down the west path, their figures slipping into the blue-gray hush beyond the trees. Behind them, the fountain whispered, the chessboard waited, and Officer Cole stood motionless beside the table until even the sound of their footsteps disappeared. In the end, there was no shouting, no grand punishment, no final speech rising above the dark. Only the quiet after truth. Only the cold air settling over Brookdale Park. Only one man left alone with the knowledge that power had spoken first, but dignity had the last word.